Today I'm excited to have Ray Gage on the Mindset Growth Podcast. With me today is Reggie Miller, my co-host. And just a little bit that has me excited about having Ray. I met him probably 5 or 6 years ago and seemed like a very interesting individual just from the fact that we had similar business backgrounds. But one thing I quickly could pick up from Ray was the fact that he's got a really deep mindset of just how he processes things and how he breaks things down, things we go through in life. And he's got a very good way to challenge people to think maybe in a different way than what they have before. And sometimes he is a little bit of a smart aleck, but he makes us all laugh. So I'm excited, Ray, to have you on this podcast.
Oh, I am really excited to be here, Gary, and I hope to be able to live up to at least half of what you just said.
All right.
Which part? The deep part or the smart aleck?
Yes.
And there it is.
Yeah, yep, there we start. Okay.
There we start.
I'm going to jump in here a little bit. First thing I want you to do is tell us a little bit about yourself, what your background's been, family, that type of thing.
Sure. So just to give kind of the Reader's Digest version, but fill in a lot of blanks maybe. So I was actually born and I say raised, but in upstate New York, about an hour from Lake Placid, so in the Adirondack Mountain region. My family had been there for generations, basically. But at 16 years old, my parents moved us out to the beautiful flat state of Indiana, where on my way here, I saw an actual lightning bolt for the first time in my life, if you can believe that or not. Most people from the Midwest can't conceptualize that. So, but I have been here in Indiana ever since that time. So I am married. I have 5 children, an older set and a younger set, older set from first marriage and younger 2 from the second marriage. And I also have 4 grandbabies and a 5th on the way next month. So I have my 2 youngest are still in school, 13, 15. So a 7th grader and a freshman. So life has been really interesting for me, and I've basically been a parent my whole life. So, which, you know what I mean? I mean, if you have kids, you're a parent your whole life anyway, but I've actually still having to parent at my age, which is a little unusual, but allows me to have perspective for the people that I'm working with that are younger than me as well.
Awesome. Congratulations on the new grandbaby.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, it was my first granddaughter. She's not quite 3 weeks old, so we're excited about that. A little disappointed that they live too far away. We haven't actually been able to see her yet in person, and kind of chomping at the bit to get out there and visit. But it'll happen soon enough because, Grandpa can't wait to get his hands on that little angel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So moving forward, what's your morning routine?
What's my morning routine? So I actually, my alarm goes off during the week every day at 4:50. And I can't really give you a reason why I arrived at that time. It's probably evolved a little bit over the years. It didn't used to be quite that early. I think as the kids got older and got up earlier, I moved my time back because that's my time. And I didn't want it to lose that time because things were happening in the house around me. So I get up basically. I spend a few minutes just kind of with some mindset affirmations, setting some intention for my day even before I get out of bed. Get out of bed. I get ready for my morning workout, but before my morning workout, I actually will take between 15 and 25 minutes, depending on that particular day's meditation. And I actually will spend some time meditating prior to the physical activity. And then I spend, usually maybe 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the day, with that physical activity, working out. And then after that, things start happening in the house, right? So the kids are getting up, the wife's getting up. I spend some time, with them, helping them get their day going, and of course, coffee, breakfast, all the normal stuff then happens after that, getting ready for work and heading out the door.
Awesome. How long have you done that?
So I have actually been doing that, I would say, consistently now, and I throw that in there because I have done it off and on for quite a few years, but consistently it's about getting close to about 10 years now.
That's wonderful. I just know that.
Gary,
go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to throw in a quick question here. Your affirmations that you talked about that you often do even before you get out of bed. I know there's a lot of different ways to do affirmation. Curious how you do yours.
So that's evolved a little bit over time too, as far as the way that I do it. And what I'm doing now is kind of an offshoot of a program that I took, that I went through, was a Mind Valley program, but it's people that are involved in personal growth may recognize the Silva method. And there's some of the affirmation piece that I do now in the morning, I took from the Silva method. So using basically setting some intentions. The intentions that I'm setting now revolve more around, I guess, it's kind of more of a spiritual aspect of things. So when I talk about spiritual, I'm not talking about, like a religious thing, but just the connection to the connection to the whole of everything, right? So whether you refer to that as God, the universe, however you do that is more along those lines, and learning to trust my intuition more, following basically having that connection so that it enables me to show up with more presence in my human relationships. So being able to understand past what people are actually saying, like trying to hear what they mean, being able to deepen that connection. So that's what the affirmations are around, that type of that makes sense.
And I assume since you're in bed yet, that's a silent thing that you're doing in your head, not audible, that you're telling yourself who you want to become or what you.
Right. Yeah. No, it's most things that happen in your head are only silent because no one else can hear them.
That I understand. But
Okay.
I've also done my affirmations. I've done my affirmations, out loud. And you hear of a lot of guys that they'll have their affirmations on their mirror or in their shower, that type of thing, to where they're telling themselves. So I was curious the way you did yours.
Yes, and I would say, I've done that too, Reggie, in the past at different times. So I don't try to be super rigid with everything that I do in the morning. It's just like right now, that's the way I'm doing the affirmations. I have done affirmations the way that you're talking about in the past, and I could do that again in the future. But it's just right now where I'm at, I feel like this is feeding my soul more from that, as far as that goes, and where I'm at right now.
I think that's a great point, because it does from time to time. Life changes, and it gets hard to stay rigid onto one schedule. And when you get away from that, sometimes you feel like you're failing and you need to do better. But giving yourself that grace and kind of rolling with it.
Right. Exactly. And then I will do that morning routine. The part that I can do in bed, I don't just do that during the weekdays, right? So I can also do that on the weekends. So, that's basically everyday thing.
Yeah.
The one thing that I have come up quite a bit is morning routines. And when I work with clients, that's one thing that we always work on. And if there's a frustration that I feel like somebody feels like they're letting themselves down, it's often the morning routine. So that's why I like to ask that question so that they can maybe listen to this and have a little bit of an understanding how important that is to maybe the quality of life and how it helps set direction and a path that you're on to be successful and find success. And not only success, but that can mean quite a few different things, but even, peace, happiness, balance. So there's a lot of things with that. I'm going to move on just to keep this thing moving forward, and we're going to ask you some rapid fire questions. So just when I ask this question, just throw the answer out there. It's just kind of fun to get you warmed up and maybe get you a little off balance. So here's the first one. Which founding father would you most like to spend the day with?
Thomas Jefferson.
And why is that?
I've always been fascinated with Thomas Jefferson, actually. He was brilliant. He had a brilliant mind. He was involved in so many different pieces of the founding of the nation, if you look at it from that perspective. He was just, if you've ever been to Monticello and just seen some of the engineering things that he came up with for the house and some of the things there, they're just really fascinating. But he basically had his fingers in just about everything. So that, I don't know, he's always fascinated me. Obviously, I'm fascinated by history in general, but Thomas Jefferson is an easy choice for me on that one.
I take it you like history then?
Absolutely. I've always loved history.
Right. And I have too. And so it's one of those things that I feel like if you lose touch with history, we tend to just repeat our habits. And so a lot of it can be going back at the history of our own lives as we look for improvements. Do you ever see it that way?
Oh, absolutely. You have to understand where you came from in order to understand why you are where you are, and you can't get where you're going without knowing where your starting point is. So it's all tied together.
Excellent. All right. Here's the next one, Ray. What question would you ask if you were me?
What question would I ask me if I was you?
Yes. Right now.
What's wrong with you?
I did not have any idea what to expect, but that is so, that is such a perfect answer coming from you. Oh, gosh. Well, I don't even know that we want to expound on that one.
Okay.
Okay. Well, the next one might follow up just on this one a little bit. What are you too hard on yourself for?
That's really an interesting question too, because I've actually been spending some time thinking about that lately. So, did I know you were going to ask that question? No, I didn't. And so that's why I think it's really interesting that you asked it. So I think that what I'm hard on myself about is is feeling like I'm not doing enough. And I think that's something that I've always had. So I've always had in the back of my mind. And what I find is when I'm talking to other people is that's really a lot of people at the root of things have that same thing that they're hard on themselves about. So either I'm not doing enough or I'm not enough. I could be doing better. Why am I not doing better? And so that would be my answer to your question of what am I hard on myself about?
I think a lot of people deal with that, and that's a very humble and honest answer. It's I ask the question, or I even ask myself a lot too, am I reaching my potential? So I appreciate you sharing that and being open about that. What's the dumbest way you have ever been injured?
The dumbest way I've ever been injured? I've very seldom been injured, so I'm going to go back to the very first time I tried on skis and didn't know what I was doing and didn't know how to use the poles, and I fell and I caught myself with my arm outstretched, and I don't even remember what the injury was to my shoulder, but I was probably 13, 14 years old at the time. And I wanted to act tough, so I didn't really tell my mom what had happened. And then by the time she realized something was wrong, I couldn't move my arm. So I mean, that's really probably the dumbest thing I've done from an injury standpoint, but it really wasn't a dumb injury. I've always been involved, as a kid I was involved in sports. I played basketball, I played soccer, but I never broke anything. So it's hard for me to pick a dumb injury.
Well, I know you're a calculated individual, so that's, I can believe that. Going to move forward a little bit now, get into, back to you. And can you remember what happened in your life, or what was it that just set you on a personal growth path? It seems like it's been a journey of yours in life. And was there an event, or was there something that evolved?
Yes, actually. So I remember exactly where I was, who I was talking to when it started. So I don't remember exactly when. It was about 22 years ago, 22, 23 years ago. And I had a really good relationship with someone who was older than me that I kind of looked at. I look at him now, I realize he was a mentor and probably a coach. Even though that wasn't his title, he was an herbalist that I saw. And I don't know what he saw in our conversations, but one time we were staying out in his driveway before I left, and he said, something's been on my mind. I wanted to ask you a question. And the question that he asked was basically something along the lines of, how long have you felt like the things that you believed didn't make sense to you? And that was the question that he asked me, right? And it was almost like the floodgate started to open, and it was really that question, that moment, and that process that started there. What it was the beginning of my journey on personal growth. It started with, and I'm sorry if this is where I'm thinking, okay, do you want me to go this deep or not? It started with basically unlearning everything that I thought was true and relearning what I felt was true for me. That makes sense?
Absolutely.
So how the journey started was basically turning what I believed turning it from what I believed because someone else told me I should believe it into what I believe. And that's what started the journey. And it's just, it started more on, there was more of a religious connotation to the line of questioning at the beginning. And, then it started to evolve into more than that, and, looking at more introspective and things that I could do to try to better myself so that I showed up differently in the world. So that would be, I absolutely know exactly when it started. It all started with a very well-placed question.
Which probably brings you to some of the things you're doing today. And we'll circle back to that just a little bit. At that point, were you already involved in insurance, or what was your insurance background, and how did that coincide?
Right. So I don't know that my insurance background actually coincided with any of that, surprisingly enough. So I actually had been in insurance. I've been in insurance for 30 years. So I had been in insurance for about 10 years prior to that happening. So, yeah. And we'll circle back to that later, but the short answer to that question is that really I didn't see a tie-in at that point in time to the insurance.
And I guess I just asked because of the human aspect of you working with people on a daily basis, is why I asked
I
that.
didn't, right. And I know, and I didn't make that connection, Gary, until later.
Okay.
I guess,
All right.
does that make sense?
Yes. Let's jump into the insurance, though, a little bit, and then we'll probably come back to a couple of questions from now, somewhat of your personal growth. But I don't want to, because it's been such a big part of your life. Can you tell us a little bit about your insurance background, and how that's been for you?
Sure. So I actually started my career in insurance, like almost everyone else in insurance, which is by accident. Hardly anybody does it on purpose, and just there was an opportunity that came up that I became aware of with a small insurance company, actually, here in Indiana. And I started my insurance career working on the insurance company or carrier side of the business as a field rep. And it didn't take me very long to figure out that if I was going to stay in insurance, the agent side was the side that I really wanted to be on. And there were a lot of reasons for that. Some of it was more connection to people, the ability to be more in control of my own destiny. And those are probably the two driving factors. Building a business and being able to have some flexibility as I did that was part of the other reasons. So I was with the insurance company for about 3 years, and then I transitioned over to the agency side of the business with an older gentleman who had an existing agency in a small town near Fort Wayne, Indiana, called Grable, and he had no perpetuation plan. So I became the perpetuation plan and bought the agency from him in 1997.
Okay.
And so started on the agency journey in 1992, but actually, as an owner in 1997. So when I say 30 years, I guess I should quantify that I've been an agent for 30 years, but I've been in insurance for 33.
Okay.
Over the years, I've kind of evolved a little bit into what I do, and right now I've picked up some certifications, and my focus is primarily on large commercial businesses, and specifically work comp and safety.
So do you have any certifications, or if you do, what are those and what are some of the achievements?
So actually I have two certifications in work comp. They're both through the Institute of Work Comp Professionals. One of them is the Certified Work Comp Advisor, and then I also went to their master's level course, which is their Master Work Comp Advisor. And I think now the number is a little higher than it used to be, but there's still less than 250 of us in the entire country. With that designation. So it's kind of pretty cool to have that designation. And then on the safety side, I have it's called the CIRS, which is a injury record keeping designation that's primarily tied to OSHA injury and OSHA injury record keeping. So those are my professional designations. The other one, I used to say, I actually had it on my business card for a long time when I did own my own business. It said chief cook and bottle washer.
Well, you really undersold yourself there.
So
when it comes back to your clients, though, I know you work, and I know this just from prior conversations, and I'd like you to expand on it just a little bit. You work a lot with the construction industry and manufacturing and small business. And so is that something that was part of that agency culture when you came in, or is that just a group of people you enjoyed working with? And that's something you developed over the years?
Right. So the agency that I came into had a small a business group of clientele, and they were primarily, because of the area that we were in, they were primarily Amish
owned
businesses. And in our area of the state, which we're actually in Indiana, there's the largest pocket of Amish is up in the Shipshewana area. The second largest is in Allen County, where I live. And the Allen County group is really heavily into construction, which is different than the group up by Shipshewana. So developed relationships with the Amish community and from a business insurance standpoint over the years. And so that's actually kind of been, I guess, that's where I kind of cut my teeth in the business insurance was working with the Amish. Over the years, we've actually got to the point where we kind of became their trusted advisor, for lack of a better term, for that community, to the point where I haven't actually checked the specific numbers lately, but at one point in time, not too long ago, we actually, for our agency, insured over half of the Amish-owned businesses in the county, which is kind of cool. Developed as time went on with the work comp expertise, started getting into some more larger commercial accounts on the construction side of things, and then also with that expertise, it kind of transitioned over into manufacturing. So the manufacturing came in later. The larger construction, so the manufacturing and the larger construction, I would say, came in probably in the last 15, 16 years. But we've maintained the base all along with the Amish community.
And I have to believe, and maybe you can answer my question on this, that some of that with what you're doing with coaching now and working with small businesses, because I know, I have an insurance background as well. It seems like we really get involved in doing what I'm doing now. I already did over the years with some of my clients, just to help them sustain or grow. And as you said, you're the trusted, you were kind of the trusted source. So how much did some of those people rely on you? And now you look back and you realize that maybe you were doing more coaching by default than what you really realized.
Oh, 100%. I mean, one of the things that I've always prided myself in and was just getting up and feeling like I was making a difference. And in insurance, it's hard to differentiate yourself because of the way that the public in general thinks about insurance, right? And you understand that because of how long you've been in it as well. So, the way that I tried to set myself apart was more on the, and I don't know the right term would be, the teaching side of things, is just making sure, helping people understand more how things worked and why things worked the way that they did, because we have a fear for things we don't understand, and then we default to the reason we make the choice. We default to something that doesn't make sense when you look at it from the outside, right? When you're in the inside of it, it makes perfect sense to you at the time. So what I try to do is develop those relationships with people where actually what I found was I ended up not realizing it, like you said, until much later, that I actually was more of a coach consultant than I was insurance agent, right? So absolutely, you're absolutely correct with that. And I'm sure that mirrors your experience as well.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's I think a lot of times the rewarding part is helping them just connect the pieces and be able to more successfully run their business. Obviously, it's beneficial for all parties if they can grow and find more success. With that, I'm going to ask you, what led you into coaching? And that's kind of a lot of what we've just been talking about, but I have to believe there were some moments that something kind of struck you in a way that gave you that desire. Right.
So I think that, kind of going back to what we were just talking about, is I started to feel a little less fulfilled on a daily basis coming to work. So backing up just a little bit, so about 3.5 years ago now, I actually sold my business to a larger firm, and I'm still working. I'm still running basically for all intents and purposes, I'm still running my business as a branch for them. I just, some things are different when you are no longer your own quote unquote boss, right? And so I found myself longing for that feeling of contribution, of making a bigger difference, and feeling like I wasn't making the same difference that I used to, or maybe it was more of a transition over realizing that I could make a bigger difference if I was doing something different. And that contribution, I guess it just kind of, the aha moment for me came one day when I was having a conversation with someone, and they said, well, you'd be great at coaching, and you probably don't realize that you've actually been coaching for a long time. And that really made me kind of pause and think what did they just say, right? And and Reggie knows, because he and I have had plenty of conversations over the last couple of years about my desire to maybe move into something different, whether it was a different career or not, I didn't know at the time. But the coaching aspect of it really, that's how that kind of came to the forefront, and it really resonated with me. And I think a lot of times, the things are brought into your path that we have a tendency to want to resist those things because of the fear that we have of change, right? So fear does two things. Fear motivates you. It either motivates you to do something, or it motivates you to not do something, right? So usually the fear that's the worst is the one that motivates you to not do something. Mm-hmm. So and that's kind of the realization that I came to is why am I afraid of this? So actually I've been working through that still, as you know, from some of the conversations that we've had together, that I'm still working through some of that, because it's a process, right? It's always a process. None of us is perfect. Sometimes we need to coach ourselves. Sometimes we need someone else to coach us. And so that's there again, I just went probably a lot deeper than you expected me to, so sorry about that.
No, don't apologize. That's absolutely what I was hoping you would do. The fact is, if we're going to help others, we have to stay hungry and look for advice and counsel and things that we can grow with as well. At any point when we feel we've arrived, we're just, we're probably shoring up our usefulness. So, and just for the listeners, I'm going to, I talk a lot about fear, and I'm curious to have a little bit of your idea or your thoughts on this. And Reggie, you can jump in on this too when I finish this. But a lot of times as we grow up, you'll see a child and you just have a new grandbaby. There's no fear. That child's going to start to walk, fall down, and you're just like, the parents are running to try to stop them from falling and getting hurt. But it really is, a lot of it is environment that teaches us that fear is a bad thing. Don't do this. It's going to hurt and all of that. And so our mind takes all this information in. And so for years, I associated fear as a negative thing, and it was wrong. I shouldn't have it in my life. But you hit on a really key point, and I feel like it's something that folks have to come to understand, is the fact that a healthy fear is one of the greatest powers you can have in your life. Because at the point that we have a healthy fear, our senses are heightened, we articulate more clearly and sharply what's about to happen, how we're going to move through this event. And, it's when it's really bad is when it locks us up and stops us from moving forward or taking a risk or trying to accomplish something new. I don't know if either one of you, I'd like a little conversation from each of you, how you've experienced that.
You want to
go ahead, Reg? No, go ahead.
Yeah. So, it's the conversation around fear is different depending on who you're talking to, right? And so what I like to think about as fear. So fear is actually, it's for lack of a better term, it's an evolutionary response, right? So if you think about it, like back, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, when we were as a human race was exposed to different things, right? So the dangers were different. I mean, there was a lot more there was a lot more lawlessness, right? There's a lack of structure in society, and people had to be on their guard, right? So your fear response is the initial fear response is fight or flight, and the reason for that is there was times in the past when humans were exposed to things that they had a choice in the moment. They had to fight or flee or die, basically, right? And so we have that. It's kind of built into our DNA. But in the world that we live in today, we're very rarely exposed to that kind of danger, right?
Right.
So when we have the response now, the response that we have to fear is the fight or flight response, which releases, there's a chemical release involved in that. There's an adrenaline release that's involved in that. Well, if you're releasing that adrenal release is happening in situations that are not really life or death like they used to be, then that actually can hurt you. So it needs to be, in thinking about it, the adrenaline rush that you're talking about, right? Sometimes we need that adrenaline rush because it gives us clarity. It gives us the ability to make a decision in the moment that we might not otherwise be able to make without that chemical release or that adrenaline rush. So in that case, then that's okay. But if you don't learn how to control that or try to get a better handle on it, you can actually end up doing more damage than you are good, because you're having the adrenaline release and there's really no reason for it. You're not about to die. You're not about to, fall off a cliff. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, so that's when talking about fear, fear can be really dangerous at the same time as it can be good. But it's more about understanding the situation that you're in and whether basically you have to take time to pause. You have to take time to stop and think, okay, how am I feeling in this moment? And is this is this the best response for me to be having? Is this response a response that could potentially hurt me in the long run, or is it one that's helping me? And, just being present with yourself and understanding the emotion that you're having and where it's coming from can be really beneficial. And I'm giving you a little different perspective maybe than what you said, or maybe I'm saying the same thing differently, but let Reggie go next.
I don't know that I can add too much more to that. What you had talked about as far as, I think it's important to, whatever emotion you have, is to identify it, whether it's fear, whether it's happiness, mad, and then what do you do with that emotion and where it's coming from, like Ray said. As he was talking, I was reminded of this past weekend. I was on the way to Ohio, and we came upon a road closed sign because the bridge was out. And I was kind of looking at my map and looking at the sign and which direction am I going to go. And I veered. I kind of, instead of doing a nice turn, I kind of gently went over in the other lane and turned. And I was all okay, but a Harley Davidson guy on his motorcycle with about 6 other riders there, he thought I had turned a little short. And he yelled at me because he's outside. And, everything changed inside my body at that point because he had just yelled at me. And now I wanted to stop and prove to him that I didn't really do anything wrong. Here's my situation. Here's what I was doing. And don't you be yelling at me, I had my granddaughter with me along with my wife. And that's where, like Ray was talking about, is identifying the emotion and what am I going to do with it? And how is it going to change my day, right? Am I going to now, I think Zig Ziglar always said, you kick your cat, right? So the cat gets kicked because somebody else made you mad. So am I going to start kicking my wife now, kicking my grandchild. And that's where I just had to kind of take a deep breath and change the emotion that had come over me. And it took me a little while, but I didn't kick anybody's cat. So I kind of changed it there on you a little bit, Gary, but identifying the emotion and understanding and controlling it. Because it's really the outcome of what happens.
Yeah.
Or what has happened, right?
Right. Well, fear is an emotion. Fear is an emotion, and that's why we respond with it as we do, because we are emotional beings, and a lot of our strength comes from how we learn to control that.
Right, or live with it. I really loved your analogy of the newborn baby, because I've used that before. So that's a great analogy for a lot of different things, not just fear, right?
Right.
So yeah, that was a good place to start.
All right, I'm going to ask you a final question, and then Reggie, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, and Ray, if you have even anything you'd like to share that you think listeners would like to know. But my last question is, what is your passion in life?
So, and what it really comes down to is again, I think that this evolves over time, and I probably had the same passion, just didn't identify it in the same way. My passion is to show up better in the world so that I can help other people show up better in their world. And that's kind of a really short way of answering your question. But that's what it boils down to. So I want to show up better in my world so that I can help other people show up better in theirs. And that's kind of what coaching is all about, right? So it's not just helping other people, but you have to continue, like you said, Gary, you have to be on the continual path of personal growth as well. And that's it. At the end of the day, that's kind of what it boils down to.
Mm-hmm.
So to ask one question to clarify that maybe a little bit, because you say it has evolved, but clearly when you were telling me about how you got into, or telling the audience about how you got into insurance, you wanted to go from the company side to the agency side because you wanted more interaction. So
right.
I guess I bring this up more for listeners than for you and I think we have probably an understanding of this, but it also was clearly a pattern and something in your core way back before you understood it. Because I think that's one thing people sometimes believe they really need to change who they are. But I think within the core of each of us, it's there. It's a matter of uncovering it sometimes. Does that resonate with you, or?
Oh yeah, 100%. And because I really think what it all boils down to is when you're is what you just said, is everybody has this within them. So whatever it is that you're looking for, it's in you, right? And it's just a matter of having somebody that to work with you that can help you discover and uncover that. It's seldom, if ever, actually, I'm trying to think of an example and I can't, of it being something that you have to bring in. It's usually something, or it's always something that needs to be brought out.
Great explanation. Reggie, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, Ray, I love what you said there at the end to the last question. Show up better, to help people to show up better in their world. And I think just this morning we talked on the phone. I said, "How you doing?" And you said, "Fabulous." And that's what I've been hearing a lot from you. You alluded to being a little unfulfilled as a non-owner in the insurance world. And as of, I think, the last, maybe several months, I'm seeing a Ray that is driven, and you have, you can sense the smile on your face when you're on the phone, and it's that showing up better is what you're doing now. You're feeding yourself, and you're able, through your experiences in life, able to help people. And you are a unique individual, as the way you bring things about, the way you teach, and bringing clarity to those questions. So I appreciate you, and I'm glad to see, I guess, this new energy. Like you said, we have talked quite a bit in the past, and I remember one lunch where you talked a little bit about being unfulfilled, and it was probably one of those conversations where you told me, you said, Reg, I'm not asking for an answer, I'm just here to talk. But I feel like you found it. Like where you're at right now is where you belong. You've got a lot of good to share.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You got a closing statement you want to make, Ray? Summarize some of that.
Yeah, so I guess, for the people that are listening, I think, people listen to podcasts for different reasons, right? Sometimes they're entertainment, sometimes they're personal growth, sometimes they're just, filling space while they're doing something else, right? So if people listening today are taking anything away from the conversation, I just really, the last part that we talked about is probably the most important. And that is just to realize that whatever it is that you're looking for, you have to start inside of yourself. And because that's where you're going to find the answers. And if you are having difficulty with that process, then find somebody that can help you, because there are people not only that can help you, but that want to help you, that want to help you realize that potential. So I guess that would be my summary for today.
Awesome. I want to thank you for joining us on Mindset Growth Podcast with Ray Gage and my co-host Reggie Miller. I hope you've enjoyed this time as much as Reggie and I have. It's very informational to learn the transition and the transformation Ray's gone through in life. If you want to listen to this and more of these, you can follow us out on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. You can also find us on our website, GaryBontrager.com, and we will have additional information there. Thank you, and until next time.